In 1755, during the deportation, many Acadians living in Port-Royal fled. Pierre Béliveau, or Pio as he was called, escaped in his boat with his family, and they landed on this site at Major's Point, along with over 100 other refugees. Unfortunately, the winter took its toll, and it is believed that many died. Their remains are likely resting in this area. Many coastal areas in Clare, such as Major's Point, were used by the Mi'kmaq for summer campsites. The Mi'kmaq people were very friendly and helpful to the Acadians, reputedly showing them how to harvest bark lambs. When the Acadians first arrived, this point of land was an island, separated from the mainland by a narrow gully of nearly a mile long. In the spring of 1756, fearing their whereabouts would become known, Pierre and the survivors set sail across the Bay of Fundy, venturing into New Brunswick and leaving their dead in a small cemetery on the island. 12 years later, in 1768, the township of Clare was granted, and the first Acadian settlers arrived, led by Joseph and Marie Dugas. By 1774, there were about 30 families between Saint Bernard and Church Point. In 1775, Anselme Doucet, whose family had been deported to Massachusetts, came to settle in Clare and purchased land only a few hundred meters as the crow flies across the Gros Coq River from the cemetery. Anselme opened the first store in Clare on this property, selling lumber, potatoes, and other goods, while his son, Captain Pierre Doucet, sailed the Hannah to trade goods in Halifax, the West Indies, and New England. As a result, Major's Point was Clare's first commercial zone. The community continues to use the cemetery until 1791, when they would clear land for a church and cemetery elsewhere. From the 1780s to the 1880s, erosion and deposition of gravel slowly connected the island to the mainland. Fast forward to 1866, when 3,000 people met at the cemetery site to commemorate the centennial of the arrival of the first family in Clare. Unbeknownst to them, they were 2 years early. The cemetery came into more frequent use after 1889, when local parishioners built new grave crosses, fenced the cemetery, and added a small chapel and large cedar cross. In 1892, a larger chapel was built at the site, and it is the one still standing today. In the chapel today, visitors will find a statue of the Virgin Mary on display from the first St. Bernard Church built in the 1850s. It is speculated that the reason the chapel has survived many tidal floods is that the walls have been lined with stones. The site continues to be a meeting place for religious ceremonies and public celebrations. During the 1950s, the community gathered for picnics and square dancing. In 1990, the Béliveau Cove Development Commission built a walking trail to Major's Point, naming it after Pio Béliveau, leader of the refugee group of 1755. The cemetery and chapel were formally recognized as one of Canada's historic places and marked with a cairn with a heritage plaque in 1993. The grounds are managed and maintained by La Société Historique Acadienne de la Baie-Sainte-Marie, and the location remains an important pilgrimage site for Acadians who are interested in history and genealogy, and many of its visitors are descendants of the refugees of 1755 to 1756. Site improvements were recently made in 2024 to make the site more resilient to flooding, including regrading of the cemetery, as well as replacing the wooden fence and wooden crosses with a stone wall and stone crosses.